How did you secretly get back at that kid? I had a letter mailed to my office. As in paid postage etc. That was basically threatening me. Saying I better stop handing out C's and D's or word on the street was going to be that I was a bad teacher and no one would take my class and I'd be out of a job. I had a pretty good idea of who it was. Obviously immediately ruled out all the students doing well in my classes. But didn't think direct accusations would be really effective anyway. I decided to take it to each of my 3 classes and turn it into a lesson on faulty rhetoric. My expectations were exceeded when I began to read the letter out loud, and without fail each class erupted in laughter and exclaimed things like "what an a-hole." Before I could even weigh in, the kid I suspected the most definitely sat slumped in his chair without much to say that day. I hope you read it in a gangster, Mafia Al Capone voice. You better cut it with the C's. C. Or wind up in the sea. Sleeping with the fishes. C. My friend was a professor for years. He told me this one last year. A group of lousy, talkative students started acing the weekly tests in the seminar periods. We're talking marginally passing to a sudden spike of consistent 100% S. He figured out that they had a friend who was in an earlier seminar period in the week feeding them the questions before they took it themselves. He emailed them, and instead of busting them, asked them to teach the whole class on their newfound study habits. He made them all stand in front of the class and teach how they study. The whole lesson was a load of shit, and was plainly visible to everyone. Then for the next test, he rotated the questions for their seminar time. The whole group got 0/10 across the board. He emailed them again and plainly said, "Guess those study habits need some tweaking, hun." One time there was this girl sleeping in my calculus class. Well, my teacher walked over to his desk phone and says to the rest of the class, "Did you guys hear that ring?" He proceeds to pick up the phone, nod his head and hang up. He wakes the girl up and tells her she's needed in the main office. So she leaves. The entire class is super confused. 10 minutes later she returns and is like, "They didn't need me at the office." He says, "I know, but I hope that walk woke you up." Another time, he was handing out a quiz that was an example AP calculus problem. He ran out of quizzes early, which usually meant we could work in groups on the quiz. He then says, "But you know, Newton always had a trick up his sleeve." He unbuttons his sleeve and pulls out more quizzes. That teacher had tricks. A lot of the guys in my high school would dip during school, chewing tobacco. Most of the teachers would just roll their eyes, tell them to spit it out, and confiscate the rest. A couple teachers that were known for punishing teens who were dipping and would go as far as suspending them for it. One of those teachers enjoyed ducking with her students. If she realized you were dipping, she'd give you an out. You could either admit to dipping and get sent to the office for disciplinary action, or you could drink from the spit bottle that you were pretending was a Coke. I saw too many classmates try to avoid punishment by taking a big swig, only to rush off to the bathroom to vomit. Can't say they didn't know the risk before they walked in though. I had a teacher that threatened something similar. If you were caught chewing bubblegum, you had to spit it into an old lunchbox he kept on a shelf, and then take out a random old piece of bubblegum and chew it for the rest of the class. Only saw it happen once though. Pretty sure your teacher can't force you to do that. There was a kid in my class who always was cheating on my tests and quizzes. I caught him several times and contacted the parents, but nothing was ever really done about it, aside from the fact that he got zeros if I caught him. I don't think his mom ever really believed he was cheating as much as he was. And there were plenty of times I probably didn't catch him. Once on the midterm, he missed the test. He came back the day I gave the kid their scores back, which also had the answers, but not the questions. I saw him sneakily talking to his friends and they gave him their papers that had the answers on them. I didn't say anything. But the makeup midterm has the same questions with all of the answer choices moved over by one letter. Little bastard got a 3% on a multiple choice midterm. I assume he must have read one question and then copied the rest from his friends. Justice. This was kind of a common thing for multiple choice tests for me growing up. The teacher would print off 2 or 3 copies of the same test just with the order of the questions mixed up. My dad taught high school woodworking in the 80s and 90s in Australia. And he had one student that was just an obnoxious dong. Disruptive. Annoying. With the ego the size of a planet. So one day after school had finished, Dad graffitied, "Student is a donghead" in the classroom. And the next day the kid was pissed off and couldn't figure out which of his classmates had done it. The other is basically identical. So she plagiarized her letter about complaining about getting her friend expelled for plagiarizing someone who plagiarized from the internet. That's deep. Damn. 800 words? That's like 2 pages. Depending on the class. That only takes about 4 hours. Some of my Reddit responses are longer than that. Edit. General response to people saying, "OMF. You need a whole hour to write 800 words? Yeah. Because I like to score 100%. It's not enough to simply get an A. I want the teacher to think Newton and Hemingway merged in a weird space-time experiment I made to have them be my writers. The little comments they leave like funny. Very thoroughly. Read. Too much. Researched. Great job. Come see me. Etc. Next to a 100% with the stupid 8. Face makes me feel like I'm doing well. So I'll go back and convert sentences into haikus. Add alliteration. Put in puns. And so on because I want my graders to enjoy my writing. But hey. Good for you for doing it quicker. The grade's all the same anyway. Edit 2. I ain't talking about English papers. Mostly. Hence the depending on the class. That only takes about 4 hours. If you just word vomit without need for research. 800 words should be easy and quick to do. Not secretly. But I learned to take copious notes and have a file on every student. Lazy students will often try to throw the blame on the teacher. I had 2 students request a meeting with the dean of students to discuss my unfair grading. And I showed up with a stack of evidence. Every substantive in-person interaction was documented on the front of the file. And I included copies of every email and note on the inside. There's nothing more embarrassing than coming face to face with your own laziness and being unable to wriggle free. They started paying attention after that. My boss always says that the team with the better documentation always wins. Bravo. I have a student lied to my boss. She had asked me to give her a point back on something. And I got fed up and just gave in. Well, she emailed my boss saying I didn't. Basically trying to get around the system to get another higher grade. I then forwarded the email in which she confirmed she had seen her grade in the gradebook and confirmed her problem was resolved. My boss then emailed her back saying she sees no problem. And CC'd me in the chain. So now the student knows I know she lied. Class should be interesting on Tuesday. Edit. I'll update you guys on how class goes next Tuesday. The university is on spring break. So we don't have class tomorrow. I'm planning an overly nice approach after giving my blanket statement about how I keep track of all student correspondences and in a PC way. Tell them to stop being Winnie Beaches. Update 1. I haven't forgotten. Class starts in an hour. And I'm nervous because I'm actually really sensitive. Despite my beachiness online. Wish me luck. I'll probably get shit because I'm about to hand her a failing grade on the last assignment. Because you know, she failed because she didn't physics right. I'll update tonight. I was in a class where the professor had the 2 blatant plagiarists stand up and read both of their papers at the same time. Halfway through without even looking at them and his eyes turned to a wall he said out the last conclusion statement. Turns out they stole from his own body of work and they changed just enough of the paper to make it past the checker, but he reads every paper anyways. It was the most awkward and hilarious thing I have watched to this day. He then told them that each paper they wrote would be read out loud by them after each submission and he would personally grade their papers. They also had to sit at the front and he would call on them with every open-ended question first. To be clear, he was furious that these 2 stole from him. Call it their ideas. Change it into a weaker structure and complain about their low grade. He crushed them. It was great. Edit. I can't remember my professor's name. 3 years ago at this point, he was really tough. But also really fair when it came to assignments. For example, he gave us an assignment after Christmas break so that we could enjoy our break rather procrastinate till the last day of break and spit it out onto the page. He always wore a black sweater and jeans to each class. covered in chalk dust and completely unkempt Einstein level hair. He was brilliant though in that eccentric kind of way and would often try to use modern terms to explain certain things you can't just Google wisdom, so very true. Also those two did not get expelled. He simply tortured them for the rest of the year, then passed them with a minimum grade and told them they could never take any course he lectures or teaches. In terms of a getting owned, it was like watching an atom bomb go off and radioactive dust settling on their souls. Jesus, that is incredibly stupid. Plagiarizing is a bad decision in the first place. But from your own professor's published work is just a whole new level of idiot. I worked as a doorman at a terribly filthy Greek life bro so hard meat grinder bar when I was in college. One ridiculously laughable idiot handed me my own ID trying to pass it off as his. I had just lost my wallet the prior weekend in a drunken nighttime bike ride. Saved me a trip to the DMV. Identity plagiarism is real. Edit. Off not of. Let them fail. I had a student that no matter how many conversations I had with her counselor, with her parent, etc., she refused to do assignments or turn anything in. She was of the opinion that my class was throwaway, an easy A. So I'll let her fail. I stopped reaching out to her for the last 6 weeks and let her build her own gallows for her GPA. She came to me half panicked 2 days before the final, begging for extra credit. Anything. No. But I'll fail. Yeah. You will. The real world works like this. You don't do what's required of you. You fail. I tried to help but you never cared. I can't have an F. That's really not my problem at this point. Take it up with the principal. Kid. My stats professor said he saw a group of really talkative and distracting kids doing well, and he thought it was fishy. He looked at the tests and saw that they were all the same answers. Then he looked at the seating chart and noticed that they could all look over each other's shoulders to the front of the class where the smart, quiet girl sat. Solution. Give her a different test. Only her. When he handed back the tests, he told everyone who got under a certain grade, like a 50%, to come see him. Each student got like a 10% or something. When they were alone, he basically said, well, this is your punishment for cheating. Don't do it again. I thought that was awesome. Edit. Sorry, not to mention this was a high school secondary school stats class. If it were college, definitely should have been reported. I'm a stats teacher. This is similar to a kid in my class about 6 years ago. He was getting D's and F's all year, but then somehow aced a multiple choice test. First time I ever gave it. I didn't realize it, but I had accidentally left an answer key at the front table which happened to be the answer key he saw and copied. I asked how he did so well and he told me, after he bragged to everyone else, I just worked really hard this time. Okay. Fair enough. Maybe he did. So the next time around, I did the exact same thing but I left the same answer key at the front of the room. Never moved it. He used it again and this time got a 0. I pulled him outside the class and said, how did you go from 100 to 0? He was cool about it when he knew what I was getting at though. MR. Teacher. I have to come clean. I copied the first one and then tried to do it again. I said I know, and told him he could retake the second test if he also retook the first test. Which he did. He passed each test by 1 point. But it was legit. So I was proud. Edit. I appreciate the comments and kind words. Sort of validates my teaching philosophy. Something I've been changing and molding for several years. If you have a teacher you like, thank them. A lot of us hear complaints more than compliments, which wears heavily on you over time. It's replies like these that remind me why I stay in the game. Thank you. Can't really blame him. Up until the second test his strategy had a 100% success rate. My abnormal psych, a 400 level class. So you would assume people in this class were interested in the field, had us visit a local homeless shelter. This was an accelerated night class so classes were 4 hours long. She arranged for us to go during our normal class time. A few people in the class felt it was dumb or a waste of time and bailed just as the tour was starting. The final exam for that class was about 4 questions that were very easy to answer if you stayed for the whole tour and absolutely impossible if you did not. I remember doing a series of quizzes in an English class when we had to read chapters because plenty of the students weren't in the class was built on participation. If you didn't read, there was less classroom discussion. The best one was a one question fill in the blank quiz that was a direct quote of the final twist line of one chapter. The quote looked innocuous enough to anyone that plenty of guesses might look right. But had you read the chapter? The answer was extremely obvious. What book was that question on? Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.